All right, welcome to today's news, and which is not the pedophile report and not private pedo party and whatever other jokes
Actually, it is. Actually, it is. That's the breaking news.
that's the breaking
That's
news.
the big plot twist that we've been waiting a couple weeks to finally spring on everybody.
The big reveal.
Yeah. We've been pulling your leg this whole time.
You know what's funny? If we actually announced that, it wouldn't be news for more than like 6 seconds in this environment. You know what I mean?
If we rolled out all the NAMBLA people from the 90s for a press conference, and we're like really earnest and serious about making this announcement,
like on a pile of dead kids.
And with, and like pizza cheese just slimed everywhere and
everywhere, just mountains of it, like in Close Encounters, just like a huge. Anyway, all right. I took a couple of days off and came back to find out we were in a blockade. Then we weren't. Eric Swalwell apparently suddenly has 5,000.
I like how you're just hibernating. I almost would want to see the look on your face after you emerge from this hibernation and you're filled in on all the latest news developments. So do you go, whoa, 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 whoa? Is there some kind of like cartoon response, like a Yogi Bear hearing about this stuff?
I'm increasingly convinced that it takes a certain amount of time to actually pull back from all of this shit and be appropriately shocked by it, because if you're following it every day, the logic of it starts to infect your mind. And
so do you like purposely not check your phone, or do you make a mental effort to block out any sort of news related inputs?
Yeah, unless I'm working on something I no longer even check.
See, I've only been able to do that when I voluntarily inserted myself in a situation where my devices are actually like physically taken from me. So I went on like a 10-day meditation retreat once where like you're not allowed to access your phone.
Right.
So but I don't have the self-control to actually do that on my own accord. Although when I went to Oregon in March of 2024 and did the state-sanctioned psilocybin mushroom experience,
which sounds great, by the way. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, it's great because like the thing that would always ruin that, right, is this lurking suspicion that the cops could burst in at any moment and bust you in the middle of the trip, which you don't really want to even have the lingering threat of, because it could really throw things off
that in your head. Yeah.
So the Oregon, praise be unto them, remove that as even something that people have to be even sort of like vaguely mindful of. So that's nice. And but throughout that experience, they do. But it is encouraged. Like you're not supposed to look at your phone, which I didn't. And then I kind of carried that forth for like a day and a half. But other than those like very exceptional circumstances, I'm not sure exactly how you even do it.
Well, I think it's necessary for mental health. I'm increasingly,
which is an indictment of me. I admit that.
No. I mean, it may not be. I don't know. I may just not be able to deal anymore, or I just look at my kids and feel sad about all this stuff. But anyway, let's start with SOT 4, which is Iran. Let's and Trump clarifying the situation that we're in, which is basically giving us an update. Here we go.
It's over. The fact that they will never have a nuclear weapon. Iran, you marking it down? Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. And we agreed to a lot of things, but they didn't agree to that. And I think they will agree to it. I'm almost sure of it. In fact, I am sure of it. If they don't agree, there's no deal. There'll never be a deal. Iran will not have a nuclear weapon, and we're going to get the dust back. We'll get it back. Either we'll get it back from them or we'll take it.
We're going to get the what does that mean? We're going to get the
He's
dust
talking
back?
About the enriched uranium, I guess.
Oh, okay. The dust.
I don't know when that became dust.
Yeah.
I guess he's talking about it like the remnants of what they have in their stockpile for the enriched uranium after the June 2025 Midnight Hammer operation that was at least nominally supposed to have obliterated the nuclear arsenal. So now he's saying it's dust. So it's all just a matter of us going in and cleaning up what remains of the dust.
I like it when he gives those little nicknames for things. Remember when he in 2016 when he was talking about insurance and was talking about the state with the lines,
the lines between the states. Yeah.
And the implication is you're supposed to know what he's talking about, but you don't always.
He's even done that recently with the Iran operation. He calls it a little excursion, a little journey. He said yesterday.
Did he? A journey?
Yeah. A little journey to Iran. Like it's just this simple little fling that will have wrapped up in no time.
So it's like an
don't worry
Bourdain episode.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll sample the local cuisine.
Right. All right, let's go to SOT 5, which is a sort of triumvirate of clips.
Wait, is this from today?
The naval blockade.
Yeah, this is today.
What's the end game? Is it to force Iran back to the negotiating table? Is it to open up the strait so that gas prices ultimately come down?
Maybe everything. I mean, both of those things, certainly, and more. We can't let a country blackmail or extort the world, because that's what they're doing. They're really blackmailing the world. We're not going to let that happen. And, the amazing thing is we don't, can you believe this? We don't use the strait. We don't need the strait. We have our own oil and gas, much more than we need. We have more oil and gas than Saudi Arabia. Think of this. We produce more. Saudi Arabia, and add Russia to it. Substantially more. And by next year, we'll have double that amount. So we don't need it, but the world needs it. And many ships are heading to our country right now as we speak to load up with the best. Really, I guess you could say, somebody said the best and sweetest. I don't know exactly what sweet is, but when it relates to oil, it's a good thing. Now, it could very well be this is going to be settled before that. We've been called this morning by the right people, the appropriate people, and they want to work a deal. They would like to work a deal.
Is it your anticipation, Mr. President, that other countries will assist in this effort to blockade Iran and those?
Yeah, other countries are going to also.
Which countries, sir?
We don't need other countries, frankly, but they've offered the services. We'll let it be known probably tomorrow.
It's not reached by the end of the ceasefire. Does your threat from before still stand?
Yeah, I don't want to comment on that, but it won't be pleasant for them. Let me put it that way.
Okay, so we don't need anybody. We got all our own shit.
And then pull up the Pope clip from this.
Okay. So this is well, you need to show the number 20. There's the Trump's truth about Pope Leo. If we can look at number 20.
Because the truth and the Pope feud plays into Iran.
Right. Yes, exactly. Can you read it a little bit, Michael?
Okay. And just bear in mind, I don't know if you saw this map, but this came within hours yesterday of him also posting an AI image of himself as Jesus Christ.
It's like the most amazing picture ever.
People were pointing out that he kind of just pilfered it from somebody else who I guess created that and posted it, which is how he gets a lot of his weird memes that he ends up posting. But in the version that he posted, it seemed like there was like a subtle adjustment where it looks like there's almost a demonic figure, a darkened visage of some demon-looking figure in the background. See right on top of him.
Right. Yes.
Like that doesn't appear to be in the original version that somebody, I guess, created, one of his fans.
So yeah, he added.
I don't know what happened, but of course, like the demonically inclined crowd out there pointed that out very eagerly and extrapolated a lot of meaning from it. But this reminded me of one of my all-time favorite Trump quotes that I couldn't resist tying to his little journey into religiosity yesterday. Quote, "Religion is such a great thing."
Religion is a great thing. Excellent.
It's such a great thing.
Such a great thing.
That was him in 2024, and then he went on to kind of explain what he meant by that, and you could hardly make heads or tails of it. It was him like basically trying to BS to a Sunday school teacher about why religion was important.
Well, it's
But I'll read
impressive
some of
that
this. I'll read some of
yeah,
this.
if you could read some of it, yeah. Mhm.
So I mean, it starts out with a banger. Pope Leo is weak on crime.
I'm sorry. It's just hilarious. I'm
Like
sorry.
he's starting out as though he was talking about Joe Biden
Right. Yes, the Pope
or somebody else who wronged him
Pope
politically.
is weak on crime.
Yeah, there's a lot of vandalism going on in Vatican City that Pope Leo refuses to get a handle on.
So go keep going.
He got rid of stop and frisk in the Sistine Chapel, and terrible for foreign policy. He talks about fear of the Trump administration, but doesn't mention the fear that the Catholic Church and all other Christian organizations had during COVID when they were arresting priests, ministers, and everybody else for holding church services, even when going outside and being 10 and even 20 feet apart. So if you read this, it's sort of strange. I thought he must have been referring to like police or some other state authority making these arrests or breaking up church services during COVID, but it almost makes it seem like he's indicting the Christian organizations themselves for having effectuated these arrests. But I don't know. It's just not really precisely worded, which why would you expect it to be? I like his brother Louis much better than I like him because Louis is all MAGA. When Pope Leo was first elected or appointed, Trump did host his brother Louis from Florida in the White House because he likes Louis because Louis is very pro-Trump.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
He gets it, and Leo doesn't. I don't want a pope who thinks it's okay for Iran to have a nuclear weapon. I don't want a pope who thinks it's terrible. By the way, Trump is not even Catholic, right?
I know, like, and what does the Pope have to do with what kind of Pope would endorse anybody having a nuclear weapon?
I don't know. Those, Pius the something might have had some strange ideas back in the day.
I don't know.
I don't want a pope who thinks it's terrible that America attacked Venezuela, a country that was sending massive amounts of drugs into the United States, and even worse, emptying their prisons, including murderers, drug dealers, and killers, into our country. And I don't want a pope who criticizes the president of the United States because I'm doing exactly what I was elected in a landslide to do, setting record low numbers
in all caps, in a landslide,
creating the greatest stock market in history. So the pope should be more reverential of the stock market. Leo should be thankful because, as everyone knows, he was a shocking surprise. He wasn't on any list to be pope, which Trump, I'm sure, monitored very closely. He was monitoring that situation very closely.
He was in the whatever they call that.
He was reading the Vatican insider blogs to keep tabs on who was up and who was down in the pre-papal conclave phase.
All right, we
get
it.
I lost my place. I'm gonna have to just finish this because, like, the whole
okay, go ahead.
So
yeah,
and was only put. He wasn't on any list to be pope, and was only put there by the church because he was an American, and they thought that would be the best way to deal with President Donald J. Trump. So Trump is taking credit for the elevation of Mr. Prevost, is that his name, to be as the pope. So Trump really does seem. One of the ironies here is that in his sermon or his statement over the weekend, Pope Leo said something like, in reference to Iran, but it was obviously a not so subtle reference to Trump, that there are leaders who have these delusions of omnipotence. And to refute that, Trump is taking credit for the election of the Pope, which would speak to some level, perhaps, of omnipotent delusions he has.
Yeah,
if I wasn't in the White House, Leo wouldn't be in the Vatican. Unfortunately, Leo is weak on crime, weak on nuclear weapons, does not sit well with me, nor does the fact that he meets with Obama sympathizers like David Axelrod, a loser from the left, who was one of those who wanted churchgoers and clerics to be arrested. Leo should get his act together as Pope. Use common sense, stop catering to the radical left, and focus on being a great pope, not a politician. It's hurting him very badly. And more importantly, it's hurting the Catholic Church, President Donald J. Trump. Now, in a sense, the Pope actually is a politician. He's a head of state. So he has a political role that, in part speaks to why they do tend to comment on political matters when they come about, whether it's a war or something else. But I'm not sure Trump fully grasped that. But that was great. That gave me a hearty chuckle.
So this is a compilation. It's like it's almost like you've taken a greatest hits sampling of all of his different insults over the years.
Show the clip that I sent in of the Pope specific comment.
Yeah, okay, so that's that is SOT 6, and this is after the inevitable Trump insults Pope draws backlash stories that came out. So there's this expectation: are you going to apologize to the Pope? And this is straight out of, remember how Hunter Thompson wrote about that story about Stalin? I guess responding to some papal criticism by saying "fuck the Pope." How many divisions does he have? So
I remember back in the day, you got in some hot water for your commentary on the Pope.
I did, yes, yeah. That was I was actually
throwback,
physically removed from the newsstands of New York.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Wasn't that like, was that the New York Press or something like that?
New York Press, yeah, which doesn't exist anymore. I've killed enough news organizations now. So
basically you were sacrilege because you were, wasn't it like
it was like
the funniest things about the Pope dying soon or something like that for Pope John Paul II.
Yeah, 52 funniest things about the upcoming death of the Pope or something like that. And
did any nuns wrap you over your wrist for that with a ruler or anything?
So I actually was in California and saw somebody commenting about it on television. I had no idea that the whole thing had happened. I was
Who was commenting on it? Do you remember?
I don't remember. It was on TV. I was covering the Michael Jackson trial, and I looked down and saw that I had missed calls after that. But anyway, so here's Trump talking about whether or not he will or will not apologize to the Pope.
He now says you owe Pope Leo an apology. Will you apologize?
No, I don't, because Pope Leo said things that are wrong. He was very much against what I'm doing with regard to Iran, and you cannot have a nuclear Iran. Pope Leo would not be happy with the end result. You have hundreds of millions of people dead, and it's not going to happen. So I can't. I think he's very weak on crime and other things. So I'm not. I mean, he went public. I'm just responding to Pope Leo. And, his brother is a big MAGA person, and he's a great guy, Louis. And I said, I like Louis better than I like the Pope. We believe strongly in law and order, and he seemed to have a problem with that. So there's nothing to apologize for. He's wrong. The other thing is he didn't like what we're doing with respect to Iran, but Iran is wants to be a nuclear nation so they can exterminate the world. Not going to happen.
So, one of the cardinal rules of the art of the deal, as you might recall, is never apologize.
Right.
Even to the heir to the throne of St. Peter or the vicar of Christ on earth, you still don't apologize. So at least Trump's consistent in that respect. But I guess, maybe he expects Pope Leo to apologize for not understanding that Iran wants to exterminate the entire world, which is a new claim.
Right. And then this was, again, what makes it so funnier, as you point out, is the picture that he posts. First of all, what president retweets that picture? I just can't even imagine the thought that has to go through your head to retweet that.
This isn't even the first time he's feuded with the Pope. Like, we're almost in reruns. Like, he's been the dominant American political figure for so long now that, I guess if you're 21 in 2026, you don't have an adult living memory of the last time he actually did in fact feud with the Pope pretty viciously, Pope Francis. I think it was over climate change or immigration.
Climate change? I don't even remember that.
Yeah, it was some of his like wussy liberal stances, and I think there was ended up being a back and forth where there was like a jab made from one and then the other responded. But we went through this already, so it's almost like they're running out of material. But because he's so transfixing of a figure, you almost forget that there's this.
Well, there's been such a high volume of everything. Like the whole week on crime thing. Like, I mean, I remember the very beginning of the Trump experience for me. I was covering the end of the Eric Garner story, and he was talking about the end of stop and frisk, and he criticized the judge Shira Shinlin
Right.
saying that she was a quote very against police judge, and weak on crime. So it's that, right? It's like the
Weak on crime is just such a funny way to phrase it because it's almost like a parody of a classic political attack from a TV ad in like the
right, like a
late 90s or something.
right.
Like Al Gore is weak
Strom
on crime.
Thurmond. Yeah. Right. But the sheer volume and Trump's insults are kind of they're actually great in general,
course.
right? Like calling Bette Midler a washed up psycho, or horseface Stormy Daniels, or
I mean, Rosie O'Donnell, that's back when he was still like a private citizen pundit, but he drove an entire news cycle, or several of them, because Access Hollywood, which he later got in trouble for with the surreptitious tape, but like Access Hollywood and these sort of like celebrity gossip shows would just have him in feuding with Rosie O'Donnell as like their main story of the day. And there's one clip you can find, I think it's probably from like 2005 or something like that. Well, where he's like, yeah, I'll probably sue Rosie. I would love to see that fat ass something. But they bleep out ass.
ugly, right? Yeah.
But which makes it even funnier.
I know. And what was the other one? There was there was Meryl Streep, right? Like she was a Hillary flunky who lost big, I think was the quote. I can't remember.
I mean, he's been going after Bruce Springsteen lately and saying that he's gotten horrible cosmetic surgery.
Is that true? I haven't seen Bruce's face.
Possible he got a facelift.
We're both from New Jersey.
That was sort of botched.
That's we can't allow that. That's tough.
But we agreed last week. Like last week's topic was is Trump finally not funny anymore? And my position on that was, look, obviously he's still got this underlying humor that can even be funny in the most morbid of situations, but it just takes on a little bit of a different valence when it plays into like the day-to-day management of this ongoing Iran conflagration. There we go.
Okay.
But overall, again, like, yeah, he's like, I mean, this is like the genius of his. I'm sort of increasingly of the view that for all the theorizing in the past decade around what explains Trump's initial ascendance, right? Is it the sort of like heterodox tweak on the conventional Republican platform? Is it that there was this widespread disenchantment with the quote establishment of the two parties? Yeah, there might be something to both of those things, but he's also got this world historic sense of humor.
Oh, he's the best insult comic in history.
Where he's funnier than like most comedians,
right?
Most
yeah,
professional comedians,
right? Like remember Triumph the Insult Comic Dog?
Yeah, I saw him actually at the vice presidential debate. They pulled him out of the broom closet in 2024.
Was he good?
Yeah, I mean, he told a fat joke about J.B. Pritzker right in his face.
What did he say?
I forget now, but it was almost too easy of a fat joke. Actually, it was a little bit. It wasn't like even that clever, but that's sort of what made it funny.
You were obligated to do it.
It was just like the bluntest, the most obvious possible fat joke, like right in the guy's face, as like he agreed as a surrogate for Biden or Harris, I guess, to do a spin room interview with Triumph the Insult Comedy Dog. He just
Ooh, do you think that's
made a straight up fat joke?
Can we get Greg to try to chase that down?
I don't know. I remember observing it in person. I don't know if they published it or what.
Okay.
Or even like where it aired. It might have been the Daily Show, actually.
All right. Well, we'll see if we can find that. Okay. So just to recap, because the theme of today's show is going to be that everybody's crazy, not just Donald Trump. But what happened in the last 2 days with Iran? So he announced on Truth Social that he was blockading the strait.
Well, we got to put that in a little more context because that announcement came right after the conclusion of these Islamabad Pakistan negotiations that, of course, he sent his henchmen or lackeys. I call them now Witless Witkoff and Jughead Jared, but then they added Vance to the mix. So that was supposed to be a breath of fresh air because
after Vance went and helped the cause in Hungary.
Yeah, after Vance got like an epic size splotch of egg on his face for having not just gone and sort of implicitly endorsed Viktor Orban in Hungary, or done like an official seeming event where the implication would be that, of course, he's lending tacit support to the politician that's running for re-election, but decided to just blow past any sort of like normal expectations around what the proper role of a president or vice president would be. And I'm not even saying I'm like advocating the maintenance of those proprieties, but he decided to do something very novel and just like outright participate in a campaign rally with Viktor Orban and his ruling party. And then Orban loses yesterday in an even bigger blowout that had been anticipated.
So for people who don't know the history of this, Orban predated Trump considerably. His Fidesz party swept into power in 2010.
And he had been prime minister once before in the 90s.
Right, but the populist reincarnation came in with a 2/3 majority, which was important because then they could change the constitutional structure of Hungary. It was this huge, overwhelming kind of shot heard around the world for the incipient populist movement that was going to take place on both the left and the right. But now time is coming in a square circle, and he lost by a 2/3 count. At least the last I saw, the count was 100.
I don't think it's final, but it's like hovering right around the 2/3 mark,
like 130 to 55 or something like that was what I saw.
36 seats, I guess.
Yeah. So it's as devastating a loss as the original win was, and look, there's no way to spin this. I mean, there are lots of people who are sort of claiming that this is the end of right populism, and it might be because of for a variety of reasons. But really, voters are just disgusted with all incumbents, and he just I think the Iran war is now, it's like the stake through the heart of this whole thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's about voters being generally disgusted with all incumbents. I think that was definitely a phenomenon that you saw in like 2021 in the COVID hangover period, where virtually every incumbent had sinking approval ratings across the board. I think, based on my understanding, I'm not an expert on Hungarian politics by any stretch, but my understanding is that there were some, pretty peculiar, like localized dynamics having to do with Orban and his party outstaying their welcome, and
the heaving, the zebras,
and there was a pretty good New York Times article actually about like this rural recreational town that relies on basically domestic tourism, that is seen as sort of like, if people look at it with nostalgia, it's where they would go during their childhoods for some kind of summer holiday or whatever, and that had been a bastion of support for Orban and his party, Fidesz, right? Yep. And the reporter interviewed a bunch of people there, and they had swung hard against Orban. They had elected a mayor from the opposing party because they saw all these what had been basically public resources or municipal resources being privatized and basically siphoned off by cronies of Orban, and it just kind of played into the larger themes of corruption. This guy's been in power for 16 years. The nepotism is out of control. The basic mechanics of governance are not working as well, given his sort of insularity or his lack of attention to just governing the country in any kind of responsive way. And so that's why you saw this opposition to Orban coalescing around a guy who had been in Orban's party and defected. Yeah, and it's kind of like a center right.
And in answer to that question, the viewer's question, he is basically named Peter Hungary. It's Peter Magyar.
Yeah, I'm embarrassed. That didn't immediately occur to me when I read it, just because I wouldn't have thought that would be his last name. So I was just kind of, I don't know. It just didn't occur to me, because it's like a president named Jack America, right, or something like that.
Right. Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
But like he didn't, as I understand it, the opposition candidate didn't run on a very overtly ideological platform at all. It was just basically that he was finally the guy who the opposition.
He ran on being not Orban.
Yeah. The opposition had finally gotten their act together to consolidate around, rather than splintering off into infighting to once and for all dislodge Orban.
Right. Yeah.
So that seems like pretty specific to the domestic political dynamics of Hungary, and it wasn't really a foregone conclusion because in 2022 there was a big anti-incumbency sentiment as well, but Orban won a sweeping re-election victory.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess I'm just pointing out that if you look at the overall approval ratings of parties everywhere, you're seeing mutual declines in a lot of countries, but obviously not here. All right.
And the big loser in all this is JD Vance, but also these like American conservative people who got all these bizarre sinecures and subsidies to go take sabbaticals in Hungary and study the pronatalism policy, and then take part in these conferences and soirees like national conservatism and whatnot, or all these Americanized conservative political events that they would hold in Hungary. I guess that's all finally done. So the gravy train has been turned off.
I do feel bad for them because the other sinecures never get turned off. So
that's true,
right? I mean, like when USAID gives a fucking $400 million contract to some bullshit media organization to do anti-disinformation work, like that contract never runs out.
The liberal versions are not contingent on a particular polity choosing to keep in power a particular like nationalist political figure,
right?
It's much more dispersed and distributed around the world, and these structures that are not subject to the democratic verdict in a particular place,
right? Like,
so like if you get some like UN grant,
right,
to study like I don't know the plight of trans girls,
exactly,
Zimbabwe.
Underwater trans whatever, that never gets turned off, or any kind of anti-disinformation thing never gets turned off. But so I have some sympathy for the MAGA folks. They don't get to keep their stolen shit. All right, so anyway, they all go to Islamabad. It all fucks up. Right.
Well, I mean, they spent. I guess this is why I couldn't turn away from my devices this weekend, especially because this was the highest level meeting between American officials and Iranian officials since the revolution in 1979. Obviously, there had been lots of negotiations preceding this at like the Secretary of State levels. Like John Kerry would go and negotiate the JCPOA, or you have Witkoff and Kushner doing negotiations with the foreign minister in the second Trump administration. But it never rose to the level of the vice president. And then there were also higher level people in the Iranian delegation than they had been willing to send in the past. So there was something novel about this gathering in Islamabad, and then it stretched on for hours and hours and hours. And we don't have like the minute by minute replay yet, really, but the reporting suggests that Trump might have actually phoned in toward the end of it and basically restated the more maximalist demands, which would be in keeping with how these so-called negotiations have been structured for as long as Trump has been presiding over them, right? So in the first round, from like March to June when the bombing happens in Midnight Hammer, Witkoff and Kushner, or it was mostly just Witkoff at that point. Jared hadn't been called out of retirement yet from his private equity venture.
Right.
But Witkoff, was very clear that the condition that the U.S. was demanding for any diplomatic accord was the renunciation by Iran of any nuclear enrichment whatsoever, which anybody who's followed the issue for decades would know that Iran was never going to accept, because it would be seen as this national self-inflicted humiliation. And
so
that
again,
was,
I have to interject that we the United States has a history of doing that and having that work out. Like with the Rambouillet agreement, we basically demanded a completely unacceptable condition.
Which agreement?
With Kosovo, I guess they didn't agree to that, right? We just bombed them anyway. But we often issue unacceptable demands.
But when has that worked? I mean, I guess.
Well,
maybe
usually
it seems like the idea is that Trump, through the sheer force of his personality, can make it work this time. But I don't really see much evidence of that.
But the thing is, usually we do it with the expectation that it will be refused, so that we can then proceed to bomb the shit out of somebody.
Right, but they're saying, at least if you take them seriously, which is not
value, they were trying,
But the American side, the Trump side has said that these are red lines, meaning these are non-negotiable. And the reason why that they probably should be understood as red lines is because Trump has set it up where he's not going to be a pushover like Obama, who was willing to not uphold his red lines, infamously the Syria so-called red line, where he didn't immediately bomb Syria and
Right.
when there was a chemical weapons alleged attack, and Trump thought that was like a big disgrace to America. So he's going to be tough, and he's actually going to stick to his red lines.
What's his name? The Atlantic editor, Jeffrey.
Jeffrey Goldberg.
Goldberg, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Trump is kind of has this whole partisan polarized theory where he can't do the Obama thing and actually relinquish any of his red lines. And the red lines that they've declared that have been reported, Fox News reported after the Islamabad gathering that the red lines are like, there are these 6 bullet points that are the most maximalist version. It's like what you would expect to be imposed on Iran if they were a conquered party, right?
Which again is something that we've done before, but go ahead.
If they were waving the white flag, or if they, had just had 2 nuclear bombs dropped on them and they were like Japan or something, right? In 1945. So it's the no enrichment whatsoever. It's basically the total abandonment and disablement of the nuclear facilities. It's cutting off Hezbollah and Houthis and Hamas, and it's reopening the Strait of Hormuz. So if those really are the red lines, then there's no real way that could ever lead to a bona fide negotiated outcome, despite these being called negotiations. But in Trump's view, negotiation, at least when it comes to Iran, is all about just trying to bludgeon Iran into capitulating or surrendering, which is exactly what they did prior to February 28th for this Epic Fury operation, and also before Beit Hammer. So we're just seeing really a repetition of that. Hence, Trump announces this naval blockade mission shortly thereafter because there was no deal attained, because no deal could be attained given the conditions that were set out.
Right.
And so now we're like in just a new phase of the war, right? Because
then they stepped back from the blockade.
What do you mean? Trump said it was launched today at 10 a.m.
No, but they changed the wording of it. It's now they're going to allow hang on a second, I'll find it.
It's a blockade of Iranian vessels. So any vessel that has as its point of origin an Iranian port or its destination an Iranian port, those are being blockaded, as I understand it. That's what CENTCOM appeared to say. So it's not a total blockade, but it's a blockade of Iran, any transit of ships to and from Iran.
Yeah.
That's at least what they say. I mean, who knows what it's actually going to be in practice, but because a blockade is an act of war, right? I mean, a blockade has always been understood to be an act of war. And he's actually invoking the Venezuela blockade or armada that he sent, which did precede an actual overt military action to, abduct Maduro and, bomb the infrastructure. And he said this is going to be even bigger and better than the Venezuela blockade. So my takeaway is that this negotiation charade, it's always about just setting up a pretext to inaugurate the next phase of kinetic military action, because that's what the pretty unmistakable pattern has been.
Yeah, I can't find the quote, but it's something about they're going to allow some vessels to transit.
Yeah, I saw that. If you go to the CENTCOM Twitter page, I think that's what you're probably referring to.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. Yeah, you're right. It's absolutely an act of war, and we're no closer to the end of this thing than we ever were.
And on that note, pull up this Ron Johnson clip from yesterday.
Yeah. All right. So where's Ron Johnson is? Let's see. Okay, it's number 18 if we can see it.
And this is coming from Ron Johnson is notable because he's not like one of the classic Republican hawks necessarily in the Senate Republican caucus. He is kind of like default hawkish on lots of stuff if it aligns with what the party basically priorities are. But he's not like a Roger Wicker or a Lindsey Graham or like a John Cornyn or one of these people who are kind of more ideologically zealous in promoting lots of interventionist propositions. And yet I mean, let's get a load of what he says because it's pretty ominous.
Let's listen to a little bit of it anyway.
Nobody thought this would be easy. They've been preparing for this for 47 years. They have multiple layers. They've got 200,000 people in the IRGC, 600,000 people in the Basij police force. They are brutal. By the way, this is exactly what nationwide gun control results in. The Iranian people are completely disarmed. It's going to be very difficult for them to rise up. And so it's a very difficult situation. Now, I hope that President Trump is successful in this, because if we could just imagine the world if the Ayatollahs, the brutal Iranian regime is no longer in power. That's what we're trying to achieve. Well, first of all, we will not have won until we have completely defanged the Iranian regime. We have to make sure. I thought it was very interesting in President Trump's address to the nation when he spoke to the families of Dover, how apparently to a person they said, finish the job. And to me, finishing the job is to make sure that Iran can never produce a nuclear weapon. They can no longer enrich uranium, that hopefully we can remove that enriched uranium, that they can no longer hold the Strait of Hormuz hostage, that they can no longer brutalize the Iranian people. They can no longer be a sponsor of state terror. So we have to finish the job. Again, there's multiple ways of potentially doing it. Short term, long term, there are multiple avenues we can approach here, but we have not yet finished the job.
Go a little further though, because he explicitly states what the war objective is, at least as he sees it, in a way that people should be aware of in terms of what we've gotten ourselves into.
Meanwhile, we have 50,000 troops in harm's way right now. We have Gulf allies in harm's way. We have gas prices spiking, oil barrels, the price raised there. President Trump was asked about people who are not fans of the war, asked specifically, what do you say to Americans who are not fans of the war? And he said, they're foolish because the war is about one thing: Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. So what would you say to those Americans who are sitting at home, seeing those 50,000 troops in harm's way, seeing gas prices spike, and listening to you saying how complicated this could be and that it could continue for a long time?
Well, first of all, it's a good answer. That's exactly the reason why we have to make sure that the Iranian regime is ended. So again, I know it's a tough decision for President Trump because he knew it wouldn't be easy. And it's not easy, and it could be longer term here, but I don't believe it's going to require boots on the ground, potentially assets to help the Iranian people. Other people eventually completely destroy the regime. But
so is that the money shot? The
incredibly weakened.
All the regime is ended.
Coming up, where he,
they are not in a position of strength right now.
Maybe I should truncate this.
We also have to make sure that China and Russia no longer help Iran. I heard a very disturbing report that apparently China is going to be sending man pads to Iran. We need to express in no uncertain terms, China had better not do that. We certainly have the capability of blocking oil from the Strait of Hormuz going to China as well. So again, we have plenty of
Senator
power in this situation, and we need to use it. I think it's interesting that you have Iranians actually calling in airstrikes against some of their leadership. It's remarkable the amount of destruction we've already brought to the Iranian regime without really harming that much civilian infrastructure. So again, I think we continue down that path. We make sure that we deter China and Russia from helping out Iran. We continue to weaken the regime until they are no longer effective and the Iranian people can reclaim their own liberty and take over Iran themselves. Again, it's going to be a long-term project.
That could go on for a long time.
I don't think Trump thought it'd be easy.
All right.
It could take a long time. But
so basically he's saying it's a long-term project now. It's open-ended, and it's got to result in the destruction of the Iranian government.
Yeah, the end of the regime. Yeah. No, well.
So there you have it. I mean,
yeah. And look, so it's nuts, and it's exactly what they said they weren't going to do, and
well, I'm not sure that's right, but we don't think it is.
Well, the whole idea of endless wars was something that he campaigned against.
I know, but everybody. Does anybody campaign in favor of endless wars? That's just a
No, I guess
slogan.
not. I guess not. But it was an implication of the campaign. I know you and I disagree about this. I think that they spent a lot of time emphasizing the idea anyway.
But if you got the impression that Trump was campaigning on reducing rather than increasing bellicosity with Iran in a second term, then I think that required a lot of motivated reasoning and some confirmation bias and maybe some credulity about these kind of propagandistic platitudes rather than actually looking at what the policy prescriptions were and what the record was and the personnel. So with Iran, I just don't think that that's really, I mean, anybody who is discerning could have gotten that.
All
that
right. We've already had this discussion. Yeah. I still think that they look, the whole premise of Donald Trump as a candidate from the beginning, at least as far as I'm concerned, was that he was not a politician. He talked about doing things differently, and this to me is just an exact replay of all the shit that had come before. Like, we went into Kosovo with a list of demands that no leader could possibly have accepted, that included things like immunity for NATO forces from all legal processes, total freedom of movement for NATO forces across the entire Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, and a whole bunch of other things that couldn't possibly have accepted and still kept any sovereignty. Then they did the same thing.
So in other words, like Serbia, I actually haven't read. I'll have to go read this. I know a fair amount about the Kosovo situation, but not as much as you, I'm sure. Like, I know the Dayton Accords came afterwards and whatever, but like, this imposition of demands by the Clinton administration at the time, in concert with NATO, would have required Serbia to accede to basically
everything,
relinquishing any claim to the Kosovo enclave, right?
Yeah, and including
splintering, like defenestrating their own country or dismembering it.
Right, and the NATO would have full and complete movement everywhere. They would be responsible for all security. They would have total immunity from any kind of legal process. But then they did the same thing. Bush comes into office. They do the same thing with. We can take this down. We did the same thing with the Iraqi inspections. Those were sort of designed to fail. Then right before the invasion, we did the same thing where we demanded that Saddam Hussein surrender within 48 hours, and that was designed to fail. And I mean, this is like a thing that we do, like the Libya thing that was done in a similar way.
Even the Ukraine initial negotiations in 2022. Where the U.S. wasn't a direct party to those Istanbul negotiations between Russia and Ukraine, but obviously it was exerting influence on the Ukrainian decision-making. And the Biden administration at the time was basically incentivizing Ukraine to fight on, meaning not agree to any terms that might require some trade-offs, obviously, at that point, but maybe could have put a stop to the war at an early phase because the United States was basically pledging unlimited military support to Ukraine. So why wouldn't they fight on if that's what their sponsor is saying is going to be available to them, or at least that's what the logic would have been. And, so they got much more assertive in terms of what demands they could maybe make of Russia in terms of like a total withdrawal or not even entertaining complying with anything that Russia might have been demanding. Obviously, it was a complicated situation, but it was that same sort of impulse toward maximalism because, look, this is another long-term project for us to embark on militarily, which is still going on now.
And by the way, that it was greeted with great fanfare by everyone in the media who talked about we have a renewed sense of purpose after Afghanistan. And so
it's like when Bush Sr. said that he was finally curing the Vietnam syndrome,
right,
by having this triumphant victory in the Gulf War or with the invasion of Panama. Yeah, but so then that really got lots of the liberals very excited in 2022 because defending Ukraine was about defending democracy, right? And Russia was associated with Trump, right? And this like illiberalism, like that ties in with Orban, and so there was a lot to get their ideological juices flowing. That definitely that sort of obscured any kind of clear-eyed assessment of what the lay of the land was practically speaking. And then sure enough, we do have a perpetual war.
Right. And so that happens there. And it's horrible and a nightmarish outcome that is massively criticized by everybody who opposed Biden. And then Trump gets into office, and we basically repeat the exact same script with Iran. Now, I get that it's a different situation, and there's a longer history that going back to 1979. But to me, I'm just struck by the remarkable sameness of the reasoning and from a politician in Trump who was supposed to be, even if crazy, different, and is not, right.
He is different in that his predecessors would not have been so gung-ho about going after Iran, which was seen to be a much tougher fight potentially than Iraq, which is smaller. The government under Saddam Hussein was much more hollowed out and brittle, and probably more liable to collapse under military pressure. With Iran, that was not really the case, and it was always understood to be a much more
it had a
imposing challenge militarily in terms of bringing about some kind of imposition of quote unquote regime change. So not only is Trump the same, maybe Trump isn't the same. He's actually more audacious when it comes to Iran specifically, maybe because he thinks that they were trying to assassinate him, or he has any number of sort of personalized motives that intersect here with Iran.
Yeah, I mean, I think Iran, Ukraine is a pretty big bite too, though. I mean, that was a pretty ballsy move, even though, yes, Russia was the aggressor there, but we kind of knew what we were doing, going back decades. And, I mean,
the U.S. basically decided to oversee the provision of a brand new military to Ukraine overnight in the middle of a hot war.
Yeah. And,
and by the way, what's going on with Ukraine now? I mean,
right. Why are we still there?
All these MAGA people, day after day, with some justice, were going after Biden for perpetual war in Ukraine, for not actually doing what was diplomatically necessary to get a resolution to Ukraine, for keeping the weapons flowing to Ukraine. And that seems to have vanished.
Yeah. And then when Zelensky arrived in Washington and Trump showed him up and talked about him not having cards, it seemed to signal the end of the perpetual.
It was just a blip. It was just a flip. They deactivated some of the intelligence sharing for like a week, not all of it actually, as I learned when I went to the NATO summit, but some for a week, and that was it. And now we have a weapons provision program where the U.S. is still the primary arms supplier to Ukraine, except now Congress doesn't have to pass any of these politically perilous giant appropriations anymore for arming Ukraine, because Trump cooked up some mechanism where it's supposedly being paid for by NATO intermediaries, which I still don't fully understand the contours of. But like, it's just off the radar totally, and I don't see any sign that the casualties rates are any lesser in Ukraine. In fact, Ukraine actually made territorial gains, it was reported in February, for the first time in 3 years. So it's just amazing what gets memory hold. And
I don't understand the tolerance for that situation. It's so dangerous. The thing that had me so freaked out at the end was, we're lobbing ATACMS missiles into the Kursk region, which is not that far from Moscow. It's like,
well, there were drone strikes in Moscow.
I know. But specifically our U.S. made missiles landing in Kursk is that would be an eyebrow raiser. Imagine if Russian missiles landed in Syracuse or something like that, right? Like,
one of the dangers of allowing the Ukraine war to fester and to become this protracted thing with no discernible endpoint is that the parameters of it could expand. Meaning, so that's why Trump would say, "Look, if you vote for me, no more. We're not going to have World War III," because the idea was that Ukraine was going to get out of control and it was going to become World War III, which was not an impossibility. Actually, Biden himself warned that if he sent too heavy grade of weaponry to Ukraine in the early phases in 2022, it would constitute basically the initiation of World War III, because it would be hot war with Russia. But now, like, look, as it's now been allowed to drag on even for the 15 months of the second Trump administration,
Right.
Zelensky made a trip to the Gulf Arab states to integrate Ukrainian missile defense into the arsenals of like Qatar, UAE, Saudi Arabia, etc. And there was a report just in the past couple of days that Ukrainian technology or Ukrainian weaponry was in fact used in some of the kinetic warfare by these Gulf Arab states. So like you even see like a creep, sort of like a mission creep, where these seemingly disparate conflicts are sort of like coagulating into one almost unified whole, which is exactly what we would want to avoid if we want to avoid World War III. Just like, all of a sudden the North Korea gets involved in Ukraine.
Right.
Like,
right.
How did that happen?
Yeah, and Iran got involved with Ukraine as well.
Yeah,
mean, so when the history books are written about all this, this will already be described as sort of the beginning of World War.
Yeah, like we're in a pre-war phase, probably.
It's like 1938 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Or maybe even 39. I don't know. Maybe not. But either way, this whole
if it's
thing
1939, then screw it. We don't have much time left, so I don't know. Let's let loose, I guess. Let's actually become the pedophile party.
Right. So all this shit is going on. We're now in this multi-front clusterfuck with two wars at a time, essentially, going on, and
they could close the other straits soon too, in the Red Sea. Like it's been suggested for a while that the Houthis, right, are who control, who Trump tried to bomb into submission for a brief period last year and then just aborted it. They could actually get more robustly involved and close off that commercial shipping channel completely as well. So, I mean, again, so this could branch out far beyond what would have been initially conceived, or what it was sold to Americans to consist of as this neat and tidy, time limited operation. That's not how it tends to work with American military interventions, right? It kind of expands, and we get the mission creep, and we get the bureaucratic inertia, and then there's some maybe triggering event that causes it to broaden even further. So that's always a danger that's baked in, whether it's Ukraine or Iran, that I'm always trying to urge people to be more mindful of when the war is launched or before it's launched, but I usually don't tend to succeed.
So people forget this, but after we went into Iraq, the whole deployment throughout the region massively expanded, and we suddenly had, 790 bases around the world, but mostly concentrated in the Middle East. We had military operations in Niger, in Syria, Libya, like all these different countries, and we just stopped reporting on it, right? It just didn't make the news the same way.
The AUMF of 2001, post 9/11, basically authorized military action anywhere in the world.
Right. Yeah.
And it's still in effect. That's still the law in the books.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I think that they were able to do this is because Trump designated the Iranian Revolutionary Guard as a designated terrorist organization in his first term,
right? Which
puts the AUMF into play. But anyway, he's not.
He claimed that the Soleimani assassination in January of 2020, like the Trump administration 1.0, tried to claim that was legally justified under domestic U.S. law by the 2002 authorization for use of military force in Iraq, which was the justification for the war against Saddam Hussein, because Soleimani was physically located in Iraq at the time of the drone strike.
Oh, I didn't even remember that. Was that the case?
That was the legal argument that they tried to make. Yeah.
Amazing.
But now they're not even really bothering with the pretense of trying to appeal to any kind of domestic law on this, right?
No.
They've just blown right past it. Like Bush, at least, ostensibly tried to get UN Security Council authorization for the 2003 invasion of Iraq. Obama would say, the Libya intervention is justified because of this international law or whatever. And then there'll be appeals to domestic law. There's not even really an argument being made that this is justified by domestic or international law. International law, forget it. I mean, they're opposed to that just on principle, but not even really domestic law. But other than the president's inherent powers in terms of as commander in chief.
But this is what I wrote about today. This has been a progression going back to Desert Storm, when they, did everything according to international law. They got the coalition together. They had, approval from all the member nations. They had a clear objective, et cetera, et cetera. His son goes into Iraq in a much less organized way, right? Essentially more unilaterally. Oh yeah, we don't have to show that.
I agree with that headline.
But then, it's been progressively less and less formalized, the procedure for starting military conflicts. From the first Bush through Clinton, then Bush 1, but now we're in a place where they're just making it up as they go along.
I was even reading today a legal opinion that was requested by John F. Kennedy and rendered by the deputy. I thought I found this on my own. Maybe you saw the same thing that I saw by happenstance, but it was trying to search for legal justification for the imposition of a naval blockade on Cuba in 1962.
Oh, I thought the Demona. Oh, yeah, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Because we have a naval blockade now, I guess, with Iran. So I was curious, and I think you're sort of right directionally about the Gulf War of under George H.W. Bush kind of being the zenith of how U.S. military action could be authorized through every possible appeal to both international and domestic law. Because there was an authorization.
I'm not saying it wasn't fucked. I'm just saying.
No, I know. I understand. Yeah, I get it. But there are also precursors where the deputy attorney general who was reporting to John F. Kennedy really could not come up with a sound rationale for how it is that the U.S. could take this act of war, which he acknowledged that it was, by imposing a naval blockade on Cuba, with which the United States was not in any kind of belligerent conflict, or which was not a belligerent that was warring with the United States. That was but basically just said like you could do it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, back then the press was much less active. You had a president who was getting shots of amphetamines in his ass every morning and stomping around the Oval Office saying, "Who can we hit next?" That was in the Dark Side of Camelot book. But yeah, no, now we're in this place. So okay, but we got to get to there was so much more crazy.
Yeah.
We got to try to get to more
Swalwell,
of it. So,
right?
So let's see Tucker first. Can we see Sod 8? This is Tucker Carlson on BBC, and again, I like Tucker, but I don't know, man.
But ... ellipsis.
Can I ask you what you thought when you read Donald Trump's post on Tuesday in which he said, "A whole civilization will die tonight"?
I was horrified by it. And I was, look, as I've said, I don't think that Trump, who I continue to like, I don't think that Trump is in control. I don't think Trump is making these decisions. I know he's not, because I was present in the run-up to this. He's not making these decisions, and I feel sorry for him, as I've said. But more than Trump, anything to do with him or his future, is the effect on my country. Our leaders should not talk like that. They shouldn't. Our conflict is not with another civilization or another religion. It's with governments, at least conceptually, that do things that we don't like, that are bad for us, and we have conflict over that. We can never declare war on a civilization. We shouldn't. That's immoral. What does that even mean?
So
I
I
mean,
don't.
if you go on, I mean, you should have gone on further or use whatever clip I sent, because he
Anyway, we'll
he
pick up.
extends the
Just
argument.
tell us, yep. Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, he extends the art. First of all, his claim is that Trump is a slave of Israel, like literally enslaved by Israel, and therefore is not in control. The United States is no longer a sovereign country. And then he's also asked, so what do you think about some of these claims, or some of these demands that people are making, including now some Republicans and former Trump supporters like Marjorie Taylor Greene, saying that the 25th Amendment should be invoked because Trump actually is crazy, so he needs to be declared incapacitated by the cabinet. And Tucker pivots and says, well, it's not even really about Trump because he's not in control. It's a structural problem with the U.S. government because nobody can defy Israel. Israel is just calling all the shots, and that's been the case since 1963. Which he doesn't spell out why he pinpoints it to 1963, but of course now it's this new theory, this new layer of the conspiracist mythos where Israel assassinated JFK because of JFK's supposed opposition to the
That was
Israeli nuclear program.
That was Joe Rogan's thing.
Yeah. That's one of the now tenets of Tuckerology.
So here's
in general, like, Trump is enslaved. Like, so there's no reason really for him to even focus on Trump as an object of his critique, because this is just an inherent feature of the American system of governance, which is just not true. I mean, it's not true that any prior president did do the same thing that they were lobbied to do by Netanyahu, which is launch this very audacious open-ended war with Iran. Like, that was refused by Biden, by Obama, by even Bush. And it's the Tucker two-step where he still can't bring himself to go after Trump squarely, even though Trump is posting on Truth Social how low IQ he is and what a huckster he is.
Here's the direct quote. I've always liked Trump and still feel sorry for him, as I do for all slaves.
Yes.
So like, I mean, a lot of the things he's saying,
he's not free. I feel sorry for him as I do for all slaves. He is not free in this moment at all to do what he thinks is best for himself or his country. And Tucker also emphasizes this by saying he knows that to be the case, as though it's factually proven. He knows that Trump is not in control because of something that Tucker himself observed, which he doesn't
elaborate on. Yeah,
but that's him reporting in his prophetic way what the lay of the land is in terms of how the U.S. government is now operating. And so nobody should really bother honing in on Trump, even though he's the commander in chief. We're told we all have to focus totally monomaniacally on Israel as the prime mover here, which is a nice little scapegoat for him. And
this is now a thing. It's all over.
It's all over.
It's all over the media now. The underlying narrative is basically this, right? This is the podcast narrative, which is that it's sort of like JFK with like 19 different subplots, like the movie, right? Like they added a whole new Israeli section, and
I don't know how closely you followed the JFK lore over the years.
It
would be impossible for anybody to read all the books, right? Because there's been 10 million of them in the documentaries, and everything that's gone on, everything that's made the JFK assassination this national fascination, which is not difficult to understand why that came to be. But do you recall it ever being one of the main tropes of the JFK intrigue,
Israel,
that he was assassinated by Israel? It was always the mafia, the CIA, Cuba, the Soviets, etc., etc. Like, if you didn't think that Oswald was the lone gunman, if you thought that was totally implausible, then it was some combination of the mafia or again, Soviet intelligence in Cuba, and or an inside job CIA thing. I'm sure there's some dusty old book in a library somewhere you could find where like somebody makes some claim about Israel in the 1970s or something, but it was never at the forefront of how the mythology worked. And all of a sudden now that's the number one thing that people think must explain the JFK assassinations, because Israel's gotten grafted onto it, just like Israel got grafted so single-mindedly onto Epstein, onto Charlie Kirk, onto maybe even the Butler assassination attempt, onto the Iran war. It gets grafted onto every troublesome thing that ever happens in the world now.
Without any new developments, really. Yes. So it's incredible because the JFK thing it was probably the most heavily analyzed thing in the history of media up until, I don't know, maybe the Iraq War,
9/11.
9/11, right? And I don't know how many books were written about the JFK assassination. And I saw a lot of them. I mean, I read a few things. I obviously saw the movie. I remember there was a major media controversy after the movie came out.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of discussion about, what's the responsibility of a filmmaker? By the way, I love Oliver Stone's movies. I think he's a terrific movie maker. I just,
That movie though was insidious though. I mean, I enjoyed it as a work of drama when
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
It's sort of like Zero Dark 30. Like I kind of loved. I really enjoyed the movie. Didn't like the politics of it.
I went back and somewhat recently when RFK Jr. burst on the scene and was trying to revive this kind of bogus Kennedy Camelot mythology, but with a more anti-establishment or anti-deep state twinge to it that appealed to a different demographic rather than like the conventional liberals who would have been the Camelot fantasizers of yore. And I read there was a column in The Nation that Alexander Coburn wrote after the JFK movie came out, because he was getting inundated with email, maybe not emailers, but faxers maybe at that time, demanding that he address the JFK controversy. So he finally, sits down and reads and watches this movie, and he basically calls it like a classically fascistic rendering of JFK, because there's one dramatic oration that the prosecutor Garrison gives,
Jim Garrison,
where he says, JFK was the father of the nation. He was the father of our nation, and he was taken away from us, which is kind of like a classic, almost, fascistic trope in terms of JFK embodying like national paternity or something. And, so Coburn, if people are interested, go look that up. It's like maybe from 91 or 93 or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I'm sort of convinced that Oliver Stone did a big disservice in terms of how he portrayed that whole event and sort of like commercialized it for popular consumption, because it was sort of a forerunner for some of the scatterbrained conspiracies of stuff pre-internet that we're dealing with today.
Yeah. The thing you're referring to, Garrison quoted, I think it was Tennyson.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Something about, let me see here, find it. I'll look it up.
It was something like "Father of the Nation."
No, it's like it's a dying king. Yeah, authority forgets a dying king. And it was this woeful oration by Kevin Costner. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I remember that piece. I knew Coburn's brother Patrick because he was a Moscow reporter. And there was a lot of pushback, like sort of within, there was like a early schism within kind of American liberalism over this thing. But
I've actually got the quote here, the Matt, that I was referring to, because I jotted this down when I was doing some Kennedy stuff from 2023. This is Jim Garrison in that oration. Quote, "We have all become Hamlets in our country, children of a slain father leader whose killers still possess the throne. The ghost of John Kennedy confronts us with the secret murder at the heart of the American dream."
The secret murder at the heart of the American dream. Wow. That's like the subtitle
Father leader
of yeah. I mean, the fatherland. No, but that sounds like a Hunter S. Thompson,
almost like founding mythos that Stone sort of inculcated, which is just crazy.
But what's amazing about it is that you're absolutely right. Throughout all of that shit, we never once heard Israel come up, right? So now Israel is all over that whole thing.
In Podcastistan, that's all.
In Podcastistan, yeah, exactly. Just quickly to respond to @MichaelRab2044, breaking news: Tucker is irrelevant. Tucker is not irrelevant. Tucker is a massive driver of opinion, and this is both this is to his credit, and right now, I would say to his detriment. But Tucker is, in terms of fighting to retain influence and maintaining a position in media across a rapidly changing landscape. He's been extremely clever over the years. But this latest thing, I don't get it.
Today he just launched a new book imprint.
Did he?
With Skyhorse Publishing or Skyhorse something or other, which is that the publishing house that it's run by a Trump guy, like one of these Trump Maha people. I forget the name, but he's published all the RFK Jr. books. So Tucker's now got his own imprint in that outfit.
That's interesting. Oh, so it's an imprint within Skyhorse.
It's like within Skyhorse, I think.
That's really interesting. Anyway, he's not irrelevant. Let's just make sure that we're clear on that.
I mean, just look at the podcast charts. I mean, not just news or political podcasts, quote unquote, but overall podcast listenership. He's always in the top 10, if not top 5, like in the country.
And not only that, you got to pay attention to what other people in media are saying. They're all echoing these themes, and you have to learn how to pay attention to the exact words that people say and the exact factoids that are brought up. And
I mean, J.D. Vance was echoing his UFO demonology stuff.
Right. And
actually, this would be a good segue to the Melania thing.
Exactly. Let's go look at number 30.
In the BBC interview, he also goes on. The presenter asks him, "Hey, did you see that strange speech that Melania gave out of nowhere last week, where she decides finally to break her silence on Jeffrey Epstein?" She's like, shortly after the Iran ceasefire, like she wants to interrupt that news cycle and bring us back to Epstein randomly.
And I don't remember this. Did we miss this?
This was on Thursday of last week, I think. So we didn't have a show on Friday.
Yeah, right. Okay.
But Tucker's asked about this, right? And he's saying, look, there could be more of a benign explanation. Maybe she's tired of seeing rumors on the internet that implicate her with Epstein, so she finally feels like she has to address it. Or there could be something darker, meaning there could be something that was planted by Israel, sexual blackmail related, that could also impinge on the Iran situation. That's what Tucker, pretty much overtly suggests in the BBC interview. And then sure enough, just today, or what maybe was yesterday, but Tucker's newsletter had the following headline. He has this daily morning newsletter. So what was the date on this one? Just to double check. Friday, April 10th. Okay, so that was the day after this Melania speech. Tucker's morning newsletter, okay, that everybody gets if they sign up for the Tucker Carlson network. This is the headline. Is Israel blackmailing President Trump? Question mark.
I mean,
and then today, April 13th, today's edition was the headline, quote, President Trump is a slave to Israel.
Right. So,
but this Melania thing was bizarre. I mean, I was gobsmacked by it.
Let's watch the Melania thing because it's kind of amazing.
Good afternoon.
And just for some context, there was no advance warning of this at all.
Well, Jeff,
there was no statement given by the White House press office that, hey, Melania is coming out to make a statement on something or other. Like, we didn't even know what she was going to say when she got to this podium, which strangely she's speaking from the presidential seal, which is not customary when first ladies will make some sort of statement. It seems to have been done without foreknowledge of Donald, from everything that we can ascertain. It just came totally out of nowhere.
I mean, how could it be?
Totally out of nowhere on a Thursday afternoon. Okay.
All right, let's
to defame my reputation. I never been friends with Epstein. Donald and I were invited to the same parties as Epstein from time to time, since overlapping in social circles is common in New York City and Palm Beach. To be clear, I never had a relationship with Epstein or his accomplice, Maxwell. My
Can you pause
email
for a
reply
second?
to
Pause for a
Maxwell
second. You
cannot
sort of cut off the very beginning, because the very beginning is bizarre how she starts it. But so then just play the very beginning, then go back to 109.
me with the disgraceful Jeffrey. Good afternoon. The lies linking me with the disgraceful Jeffrey Epstein need to end today. The individuals lying about me are devoid of ethical standards, humility, and respect. I do not object to their ignorance, but rather I reject their mean-spirited attempts to defame my reputation.
Okay.
I never been friends with Epstein.
Okay,
Fast
it's
forward a
coming
little.
up. It's coming up later. Sorry. You can go back to 109.
Cannot be categorized as anything more than casual correspondence. My polite reply to her email doesn't amount to anything more than a trivial note.
I'm still not sure what she said there.
Epstein's victim. Epstein
Okay, there we go.
did not
Pause it for a second.
introduce me to Donald Trump.
I am not Epstein's victim. Whoever claimed that she was Epstein's victim, I mean, I'm sure there are people on the internet who you could find who would claim anything. But when has it ever been any kind of commonly, espoused narrative that Melania was a victim of Jeffrey Epstein? Maybe that she knew him and therefore she's tarnished by the association with him, or there's been rumors about how Jeffrey Epstein may have introduced her to Donald Trump or something along those lines, but never herself being a victim. Like, have you ever heard that before?
No. But she's probably getting out in front of something that's, well, you can't say that, but that's what it sounds like.
That's what it sounds like, but we just don't know. And even if she is getting out in front of something, it's just strange for her to refute a claim that would not have even been like swirling around in the popular consciousness, that she was herself a victim.
Right.
Which is why, I mean, my I generally was gobsmacked listening to this. I couldn't make sense of it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because you could also interpret it as sort of affirmation by denial, right? Like maybe she's hinting at something. I don't know.
Exactly, but it gets even weirder.
But anyway, the word she was using was looking for was trivial, by the way, not tribal. But
trivial. Okay,
trivial. Yeah. Good.
At the New York City party in 1998. This initial encounter with my husband is documented in a detail in my book, Melania. The first time I crossed paths with Epstein was in the year 2000 at an event Donald and I attended together. At the time, I had never met Epstein and had no knowledge of his criminal undertakings.
Pause it again.
Numerous.
Again, what makes this so strange is just the totally out of the blue timing, but also it's not as though she's even really been a major topic of intrigue as it relates to Epstein, at least compared to Trump. Like, so what would there be for her to preempt? It's not like as though like Melania has been what everybody has been really worked up about, as though like there are some unsolved mysteries around Epstein. Sure, maybe it comes up every now and then, but like not as front and center as this statement would seem to imply, but she's proactively making it front and center.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hesitant to say what I think because in the absence of evidence, well, you don't want to draw conclusions.
I'll pry it out of you once we finish.
Yeah, but anyway, let's keep listening
because it gets weirder. I mean, the thing that had my jaw metaphorically dropped comes later, maybe even physically dropped.
Fake images and statements about Epstein and me have been circulating on social media for years now. Be cautious about what you believe. These images and stories are completely false. I'm not a witness or a named witness in connection with any of Epstein's crimes. My name has never appeared in court documents, depositions, victim statements, or FBI interviews surrounding the Epstein matter.
Pause.
I have never had.
You know, if we want to use that standard, you know whose name does appear in FBI interviews and depositions and witness statements pertaining to Jeffrey Epstein?
Whose?
Her husband. Like
Oh,
she's absolving herself. Sorry, there's a horn blowing. She's absolving herself of any culpability vis-a-vis Epstein by saying, "Look, I don't appear in any of these documents," but her husband does, and yet I would think that she was also wanting to maybe absolve him of culpability, but she couldn't. Therefore, she couldn't use the same exculpating reasoning for Donald, right?
Yep. Absolutely. By the way, that's not your car that's being robbed, right?
No.
Okay.
Had any knowledge of Epstein abuse of his victims. I was never involved in any capacity. I was not a participant, was never on Epstein's plane, and never visited his private island.
Pause. Again, you can't help but think that she's drawing an implicit contrast with Donald, because Donald did fly on the plane. Donald did interact with purported Epstein victims like Virginia Roberts Giuffre, who famously worked at Mar-a-Lago as a spa attendant. Epstein also, I think, was credibly alleged by one of the purported victims who testified in the Maxwell trial, Nadia Bjorlin, the Days of Our Lives soap opera actress, as having been introduced by Epstein to Trump in Palm Beach, not alleging wrongdoing sexually by Trump, but Trump did observe that person at one point, right? But so she's saying, I didn't do all this stuff that my husband did do, right? Which just, raises the question, okay,
No,
so if you had done that stuff and that's supposed to be suggestive of some kind of complicity, then that would all apply to Donald.
No, it's fucking bonkers, this shit. Anyway, let's keep listening.
I have never been legally accused or convinced of a crime in connection with Epstein sex trafficking, abuse of minors, and other repulsive behavior. The false smears about me from mean-spirited and politically motivated individuals and entities looking to cause damage to my good name, to gain financially and climb politically, must stop.
So it's about her good name. It's not about her and Donald's good name as a married couple.
Yep.
She makes no reference to Donald, pro or con, except to clarify that she met Donald supposedly at a party in New York City in 1998.
My attorneys and I have fought these unfounded and baseless lies with success and will continue to maintain my sound reputation without hesitation. To date, several individuals and companies have been legally obligated to publicly apologize and retract their lies about me, such as Daily Beast, James Carville, and HarperCollins UK. Now is the time for Congress to act. Epstein was not alone.
Pause.
Yeah,
Several
Okay, so that's where I said, whoa,
Yeah,
wait. Maybe
I
this is
know.
bizarre enough already, but then she throws in the kicker.
Epstein
where
was not alone. What the
Epstein was
what
not
does
alone.
that mean? What the fuck?
Epstein was not alone. I mean, that could mean lots of things. I mean, that could mean like what one of these victim lawyers said to me at the Bank of America settlement hearing 2 weeks ago, where she's like, look, there should be further prosecutions of people, but she was referring to basically Epstein's accountants and lawyers and so forth. But that's not, the average person when they hear that, and supposedly the big controversy here is that a client list has been concealed of all these VIPs, perhaps including her husband. And she just lets that dangle out there. And also she's saying Congress must act. So she's doing the diametric opposite of what Donald had been urging whenever this has come up, which is that we need to move on. This is a hoax. This is being, exploited by dastardly Democrats. She's now saying she wants to re-enliven the issue politically and legislatively.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, there are so many different things about this that are weird, but at the beginning of the video, I'm just gonna say it. At the beginning of the video, it feels like I'm gonna point out some shit that I'm pissed off about as the wife of somebody who hung out with Epstein and is named in FBI documents and all this stuff, and that's what that feels like. But this stuff, the Epstein is not alone stuff, well, we should listen to the end of it. But this reminds me of the whole "I got this from the media" thing. And
I read on the internet.
Right, yeah. So we're not sure. Like, she's obviously has inside knowledge. She's met the guy. There's been limited correspondence, et cetera, but now we're entering a territory where we got to know what she's talking about. Like, what's this based on?
That could mean there needs to not just be further congressional action, but law enforcement.
Exactly.
Action,
right.
I mean, that's really, I mean, this thing was like obviously going to be I mean, she's not dumb, right? She knows that she's unleashing a huge political firestorm by doing this at all. But then to throw in that line, that's her taking a massive novelty-sized stick of dynamite and throwing it into the political system.
No, it's unbelievable. All right, let's just hear a little bit more on this.
Prominent male executives resign from their powerful positions after this matter became widely politicized. Of course, this doesn't amount to guilt, but we still must work openly and transparently to uncover the truth. I call on Congress to provide the women who have been victimized by Epstein with a public hearing specifically centered around the survivors. Give these victims their opportunity to testify under oath in front of Congress with the power of sworn testimony. Each and every woman should have her day to tell her story in public if she wishes, and then her testimony should be permanently entered into the congressional record.
Okay. All right. Okay. Do we need? Let's
just 10 more seconds.
Yeah.
Only then we will have the truth. Thank you.
What the fuck? So
I mean, you couldn't have scripted that. You could not have scripted that. It would be too far-fetched.
There's so much stuff there that is impossible to work out. First of all, has there ever been this kind of departure, like sort of a naked schism between a president and the first lady during a presidency? I mean, I guess Clinton, right, in the Clinton years. I mean,
I don't recall Hillary going out in public and
right.
sort of announcing some sort of schism.
No, there's never been this kind of.
Mary Todd Lincoln kind of went off the reservation, but
yeah, Jackie never did, right?
No.
I
can't think of a precedent.
I can't. Maybe there is. In fact, if there anybody among the, so
yeah, do our
good
historian commenters.
If anybody out there is
Matt, your mind's in the gutter as usual.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, that wasn't me. That was well, I guess it was.
And also, think about this a little bit, a little more politically as well, right? So there are some Republicans in Congress who, especially in the House, who of anybody are the most responsive to Trump or the most beholden by the incentives politically that are flowing from Trump. If they can't win a Republican primary and be oppositional to Trump, really, But let's say there's some segment of them that did want to actually get more deeply involved in Epstein, maybe because some of their constituents have been demanding it, or they're disenchanted, or they don't like how it's been handled. Now they have the perfect political cover to actually seize the issue a little bit more fulsomely, because they're saying, look, they're just taking the directive from Melania.
I know. Which is nuts, because it's the last thing the White House should want, right?
Which is why he apparently didn't even get a. I mean, so it's sort of unclear the way it was initially reported. There were reporters saying that Trump had no foreknowledge of this at all, and then another report said, oh, he had a heads up, which could have just mean Melania's press staff gave an indirect heads up that she was going to come out and say something. It's almost impossible to imagine that like they had a long conversation to consider whether or not this was the right thing to do, and then they jointly decided, yeah, go out and make a random statement about Jeffrey Epstein right after the Iran ceasefire.
And then meanwhile, the ironic punchline to all this is from NBC. A group of Epstein survivors, including Danielle Bensky and Annie Farmer, as well as the late Virginia Giuffre's relatives Sky and Amanda Roberts, dismissed the First Lady's call for a survivor-focused public hearing. Survivors of Jeffrey Epstein have already shown extraordinary courage by coming forward, filing reports, and giving testimony. Asking more of them now is a deflection of responsibility, not justice. First Lady Melania Trump is now shifting the burden onto survivors under politicized conditions that protect those with power. So
okay, I'm sure there are some of them who would do it, though. It's like she's calling for
right. No, I know. It's just funny.
You know, I know that of course that's also ironic. But like, what is she calling for there? Maybe weeks and weeks of circus hearings where anybody and their mother, I guess, can show up and make a statement that's going to be entered into the congressional record. It's going to be aired live, right? It's going to be like the Watergate hearings or something.
Right.
That's what she's saying she wants.
I mean, I've got nothing on this. I have no idea.
Right.
One would have to be an expert in the dynamics of that relationship, but which, by the way, has not been particularly well investigated.
I heard something from someone yesterday that I'm not going to spell out in great detail now. That seems to be a plausible partial explanation for what transpired, but it's still kind of mostly conjecture, by somebody who's unusually informed. But it's still pretty enigmatic. I mean, there's a former friend of hers got deported recently, who had been she was the ex-wife of somebody who's now like a special envoy in the Trump administration, who actually did know Epstein. He's this Italian guy. And there was an idea that this Brazilian woman who got deported recently as part of like a marital spat was going to take vengeance and make some sort of statement about Melania. I don't know if that was just speculative. I haven't seen that actually happen, and it's now been 4 days or something. But there are some theories floating around along those lines, because everybody of course assumed, oh, she's trying to preempt something. But whatever it is that she was trying to preempt hasn't come to pass yet.
No, look.
If she was trying to preempt something, like, it hasn't.
She referenced the three things. I don't know what they are. With the Daily Beast,
she's saying those were past episodes. Yeah, I mean, there was she did. Yeah, her personal legal staff did file suits against Daily Beast, something UK, and James Carville. I'm not aware of the James Carville one. But if it was a forward-looking thing that she was trying to preempt, whatever that hypothetically would have been, apparently has not yet come out.
Yeah, it hasn't come out. Look, the whole thing is completely nuts on a political level, on a marital level, and also, I have a strong suspicion that there's a media angle to all this. That this is also part of the mania, that might be gripping the country. So. Okay. Carville apologizes, pulls YouTube video from after letter from Melania lawyer.
Okay, I think I might vaguely remember this.
Yeah.
What did he say?
An after a podcast tied to Epstein's dealings after legal pushback. I don't know. We'd have to go back and
I bet you.
find
I mean, I would think he probably said something like, "Oh, Melania was introduced by Epstein to Trump," or Melania was in the same modeling trafficking circles, or something like that.
Oh, okay, yeah. He took issue with a segment in which Carville discussed how Melania had met Epstein.
Oh, there you go.
Look, all right, well, whatever. That's not enough to.
That was from August of last year.
Yeah, to provoke this kind of thing, it's
Paolo
really
Zampoli,
weird.
that's the guy. That's a commenter just reminded me of the exact name.
Yeah, it's impossible to make any sense of this on the surface. I haven't seen anybody really do it.
Other than that, it's a plot twist that, again, could not have been scripted because it would have been too far-fetched.
Hold on a second. So what? Why can't she talk about herself without invoking her husband? Because it's fucking weird. Folks, have you ever been around the White House? Nothing happens that is not scripted 50 times in advance. At least in the pre-Trump era, there is no such thing as spontaneity, and when it comes to especially announcements that take place with the presidential seal in front of it, like that stuff doesn't happen by accident without the president knowing. Like there's just no way. Like it couldn't possibly take place.
She's choosing to douse this political controversy in gasoline and light it and throw in a match related to something that has been dogging her husband's administration,
right,
politically, and create and exacerbates all these tensions and fissures within the Republican coalition.
Yeah, just completely nuts.
So
There's
of course
no way to
she
explain
can, in
it.
theory, say something on the subject without
Yeah,
reference to Trump, but like this is a political deal here.
Yeah, I'm not making a value judgment or an ethical judgment or anything about what she's doing. I think we're just both saying it is extraordinarily weird and a departure from the norm for this to happen. So,
and you don't find a conspicuous commenter that if she's going to make a statement about Epstein at all and deny any wrongdoing herself or not deny she was victimized, like address the subject, call for political action, that she would just neglect to also deny accusations of wrongdoing that have been aimed at her husband?
Yeah, exactly.
She would just omit that, and then we're supposed to draw our own inferences.
All right. Well, on the lastly on the topic of sexual abuse,
yeah,
or accusations of sexual abuse, one of my absolute favorite people in politics.
Everybody's raping everybody else, so that's what we love to chat about here on the Pedo Podcast Hour.
the private pedo party.
They're raping everybody out here. There was a viral video from like 2010 where this guy made was interviewed on some local TV news channel about like a home break-in, and it was turned into like one of the early auto-tune songs. You could probably bed intruder,
like a songify thing.
Yeah, a songify thing.
They're raping everybody.
One of the lyrics was, "Hide your kids, hide your wife, and hide your husband because they're raping everybody out here."
Oh man! Well,
I actually performed an acoustic guitar version of that. Believe it or not.
Did you really?
I did. Just
I gotta
privately.
see Michael in concert. I'm looking.
No, that's not happening.
We got to start writing some tunes for you, or you got to start. We got to start doing some political satires. All right, let's look at SOT 1 and wheel out the last completely fucked story from the last few days.
It was in 2019. I was, again, driving him to an event. This was my job. And you were 21 years old. And I was 21 years old. We see some sort of parking lot, and he says,
"Can we pause for a second?"
He pulls out his penis.
I just gotta say, as somebody who grew up in television, my least favorite thing in the world is the thing where the TV reporter says, "And this happened," and the interview subject just says, "Yes, that happened." Like it repeats the quote.
No, but hold on. Why is she darkened out?
I don't know.
It's just this dogma that the media clings to, and then they say it's policy, like it's unchallengeable policy. So this was first reported in the San Francisco Chronicle on Friday. This woman's account of her relationship with Swalwell, and her identity was withheld in that article for the standard reasons of policy that they love to invoke, that apparently nobody can ever examine or evaluate, even though she she's an adult. She says she was an adult at the time that this allegedly happened. If she was 21 in 2019, she's got to be, 28 or so now. She is presumably some kind of professional political operative, which is why she, went back to Swalwell 5 years later after they had their liaison, and she was in talks with him and his staff about potentially even working on his gubernatorial campaign. Like, she's a political professional of some kind, and yet it's just taken for granted that, of course, she needs to be blackened out, her identity concealed in this like melodramatic way. I hadn't even seen this CNN interview, but that's sort of like one of just like the starting fallacies here that nobody even questions.
Among other things. Yeah, Greg, can we go back to the beginning on this? I'm sorry. Here we go.
Job, and you were 21 years old, and I was 21 years old. We see some sort of parking lot, and he says to pull over. He pulls out his penis and instructs me to give him oral sex. And I started to, again, I felt incredible.
So
maybe
I'm naive. I mean, do guys do that? They just pull over in their cars and whip their dicks out, and does that happen?
I hadn't seen this particular interview, so maybe there's some context in the lead up to when she drops this, revelation. But at least according to the San Francisco Chronicle article, this is after months of flirtatious and mutually reciprocated back and forth sexual, banter, where she's sending him nude photos of herself. And she's saying that she likes and welcomes and appreciates whatever communications are being exchanged between the two of them, right? It ain't going to blow itself. That's true. You know what? That's a good point.
I stopped and I said to him, this feels really uncomfortable, and
hold on.
Anyone could see us right now. And
he she says instructs, but when it was first at least represented in the San Francisco Chronicle thing, or maybe in the CNN article too, so there were two articles that first introduced this. It was CNN and San Francisco Chronicle. I'm almost positive in one of the two, the way it's put is that he asks her if she will perform the sex act, and she agrees to perform it. So in other words, it's a consensual sex act between two adults.
Okay, I gotta look that up. I didn't see that. But let's listen on for a second.
He said to me, "You're right. It's probably not good for a congressman to be caught with his pants down."
Did he ask you to send him lewd photos?
Yes.
And did he ever send lewd photos?
Yes. He would send short Snapchat videos of him rubbing his penis through his pants while on the airplane.
The staffer says she liked
pause. I found it.
Swalwell's
So this is
attention
from the
at first.
CNN article. In 2019, when she was driving Swalwell around his district as part of her staff duties, he told her to stop in a parking lot, pulled out his penis, and asked her to give him oral sex, she said. She said she briefly complied before stopping and telling Swalwell she was uncomfortable. So he asked her to perform a sex act. Then she, quote, complied is how they phrase it.
Briefly.
Meaning she consented to the sex act, and then they decided to stop in the middle of it because they realized that maybe somebody could see them. So that's now like what's somewhere in the neighborhood of rape, I guess, in terms of how this is being presented. He just announced right before we started the stream, I don't know if you saw it, but he's also resigning from Congress.
Yeah, and he's leaving the race and resigning from Congress
because he was on the verge of potentially being expelled, which has happened barely at all in American history. The last time was George Santos for misrepresenting his being on a college volleyball team and other stuff like that. But this was going to be one of like the incredibly rare instances in American history that some offense could rise to the level of expulsion from Congress. After, like within a matter of hours, his leading front running California gubernatorial campaign imploded. Everybody who had ever endorsed him or supported him instantly denounced him. And look, I mean, this is not even a non-consensual act that's being described.
Yeah, and for all the people who are giving Michael a hard time about this, it's like you have to think about what's actually happening here. Even if you stipulate that all of this stuff is true, the velocity with which all these things are taking place is extraordinary. For somebody to be basically bounced from Congress overnight, with in the space of less than a news cycle, basically, the campaign disappears. He resigns from Congress after denying everything.
Here's how the San Francisco Chronicle article puts it, because this was the first article of all, right? This was in the headline here. April 10th was ex-staffer says Eric Swalwell, candidate for California governor, sexually assaulted her. And this is that same woman who's now being interviewed by CNN under the cloak of darkness. So here's how it's described. And bear in mind, the journalists are now colluding with this little, ad hoc consortium of influencers, like TikTok influencers and political operatives who wanted to get this to the fore. So then they're very blatant about it. And so they're going to couch everything in the reporting that is most favorable to her description. But they say in terms of her initial sort of flirtatious or sexualized interactions over text message or Snapchat with Swalwell, the messages were initially welcome. Alone in a new community across the country from where she grew up, she said she felt encouraged by his friendly outreach and flattered that he was paying attention to her. When Swalwell flirted with her and started asking for pictures, first of her face, then of her naked body and genitalia, the woman said she went along with it because she was intrigued by him. So I mean,
and worried about upsetting her new boss.
Okay, she seemed very worried.
So we got the power dynamic thing going on here, which is what. Look, it's no matter what. It's even if there is a relationship, it's
these are flings. These are adult flings that get somehow recast in a political context as rape.
I get it. The rape thing. Look,
which is bad for everybody. Look, I said right when this broke, I've always despised Eric Swalwell politically, uniquely among Democrats.
I think he's one of the most loathsome people in American politics.
Yeah, exactly. And sure, people always bring up, maybe there's some meta discursive angle here where we could point to some Democratic Party hypocrisy or even Swalwell's own hypocrisy. We can fish out something he might have said about Kavanaugh in 2018, and therefore, he got what was coming to him. I'm sort of tired of that line of argumentation. That was what people bombarded me with during the Tara Reade hoax in 2020, because it was supposed to show that the Democrats did not uphold their, consecrated Me Too standards when evaluating that claim because it could have politically damaged Biden. Okay, fine. Maybe Alyssa Milano and other hack Democrats are inconsistent in their application of these standards. That's neither here or there to me. How come the propagation of a pure hoax wasn't the driving factor we were supposed to evaluate with regard to Tara Reade? And yeah, that was proven, with 99.9% certainty to have been a total pure hoax of a crazy person who I know personally is, hallucinating things about me because she can't get over that I wrote one article about that episode for The Spectator in 2020. And she thinks I'm following her around and surreptitiously videotaping her and threatening her pets. Yes. So she's a hallucinator. She's a lifelong hoaxer. With her ex-husband, with other stuff that she's had, that I unfortunately had to look through over the years. And that was just allowed to float out there as a supposedly credible allegation. And then everybody who was responsible for propagating that story, the Tara Reade rape hoax, just memory holes it. They don't address it. And then they just barrel on to the next one.
Can we definitively call that one a hoax?
I'm definitively calling it a hoax. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, look, I stayed away from that story and I won't get into why. I was at Rolling Stone. I was actually not at Rolling Stone. I returned to Rolling Stone just as the UVA thing blew up or was blowing up. Remember that story?
The Sabrina Ederle story.
Yes,
yeah. That was 24. You returned in 2014 to Rolling Stone.
Yes, I left briefly to do.
To do the racket first look thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. The first look thing. And when I came back was just after that blew up.
Yeah.
And I got a tremendous amount of trouble. I defended the magazine initially pretty strongly, and then was asked about it on television, and there were people asking these a lot of probing questions like, what would you have done in this situation? And I said something to the effect of, well, you know, there are lots of ways to come at the campus date rape problem, and it would have been probably easier for the magazine's point of view to deal with adjudicated cases, because there are plenty of them out there already. And that was interpreted as, you don't believe the women, and there was blowback to that. But the reality of that story was that, everybody got paralyzed in this frame of mind that we have to affirm all the accusations, and the blunder, is massively more consequential than telling a true story, right? So you got to avoid that at all costs, and you got to there's an amount of care that you're supposed to exercise in these situations, just for self-protection purposes. That seems to go out the window now. Even with a person as loathsome as Eric Swalwell, the speed of this thing is shocking to me. I just it's incredible. So
but at least Rolling Stone eventually retracted that article, right?
They did, and they
did like a journalistic autopsy of it.
We discussed it. We got the Columbia Journalism Review to come in.
But in this alt media podcast, milieu, nobody has taken any account whatsoever of their responsibility for propagating the Tara Reid hoax. So there's no penalty really for being involved in manufacturing these garbage stories. I'm not saying that all the women are just straight up lying about ever having a sexualized interaction with Swalwell. Like, I don't think that CNN woman who's being interviewed is a hoaxer per se, like Tara Reid was, or the Rolling Stone woman was. It's just that the stuff is getting framed in this very deliberate, contrived way in the context of a gubernatorial primary that's coming up in California, where the Democrats in the state have been spooked recently that given the idiosyncrasies of their jungle primary system, where like nobody's really polling above like 14%. Like Swalwell was the front runner. He was only getting like 15%. And so it could have happened that the two candidates that emerged from the jungle primary would both be Republicans. So there's been talk about how they need to consolidate around a Democratic candidate. And that is what seemed to have, at least in large part, catalyzed this effort that was sort of like burbling behind the scenes for a while on social media and on TikTok and amongst these like operatives and influencers who were coordinating amongst themselves, and finally burst open. And it's just all taken with like total and complete credulity in every possible respect, where, especially like the male Democrats who had endorsed Swalwell and even had co-chaired his campaign, like Adam Schiff, who I again also despise, or Ruben Gallego, like who's going to be, probably running for president himself. Like, they have to be even more hypersensitive, where it's like, it's almost like being told that there is a nuclear tip ballistic missile headed toward your office or something. That's like the urgency with which you have to address something like this coming out, because they can't stand to wait even another hour politically where their endorsement of this guy stands.
Yeah, exactly. So just to be clear, like from my point of view, all of the interactions with the TikTok influencers and the journalists, that could mean a huge range of things. It could mean that this is a long suppressed true story that people have worked to bring to the surface. I don't know enough about it yet. I only just got back from vacation. But it could also be politically motivated. There's a whole mountain of things that are in play, and that's why the speed of this is incredible. Like, as you say, there isn't even a day to sift through, well, is this true or not? Like, or like, there isn't even a moment of contemplation about it. other people came forward and it was over. He was vaporized instantly.
Yeah, other people, quote, came forward in this same, like, I thought people were would maybe have been a little bit more primed to look skeptically on this same pattern playing out, where if additional accusers, quote, come forward, then that automatically, gets the snowball rolling, and it flattens everybody in its path, because people came forward and alleged what exactly? Like, shouldn't we know a little bit about the details rather than just we know that other people supposedly came forward? Because if you look at this CNN article, I mean, it's farcical in terms of what the other people who came forward have alleged. Like, here's one of the additional 3 that came forward after this first woman who claims that she was raped. None of the additional 3 claim that they were raped. So here's another one.
Various kinds of sexual misconduct.
Sexual misconduct. But what does that even mean? Sexual misconduct. It's a weasel word. Sexual misconduct could, that could mean anything. I mean, but if you lump it together with rape, then people understand it to mean something that's non-consensual or illicit or abusive or physically violative. So another one of these supposedly like corroborating people, women who come out the woodworks and therefore give credence to the initial accuser, says that basically in 2025, Swalwell messaged her on one of these apps or on Instagram. They developed a rapport. He tells her at one point that he's in her city and asks if she wants to meet for dinner and drinks. So basically asking her on a date. And yeah, he's married. So if you want to moralize about that, go ahead. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that he is sort of reckless in his personal conduct to some extent, just by exposing himself to this potential liability. But that's a long way from rape, right? So they meet for dinner and drinks. They then go to a bar. They continue having drinks. He says he was sitting against me, so I kind of moved away from him. Every time that I would move away from him, he would get closer to me. But they kept ordering drinks, and then
there's another one.
It's like a date, and then he kisses her. She accepts the kiss, and they end up having sex. And afterwards, she basically starts feeling bad about it because she knows he's married, so she feels, quote, emotionally vulnerable. I mean, she could have alleged presumably that the sexual encounter was rape, if that's what she's alleging it to have been, but that's not claimed here. And then, like, she basically says that she had heard him, and then he says, "I won't bother you again, sorry." But then she continued to try to message him and exchange, friendly, texts, and blah 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 blah. It's kind of like silly that we're even privy to this in terms of romantic or sexual activity between adults, but it's used as this phony corroboration for the initial more grave allegation, which is the same Me Too sort of playbook. Look, if you're willing to just ignore that or overlook that just because you don't like Eric Swalwell, fine. But the principle, I think, also has to be objected to, because it's journalistic malfeasance, and it breeds all this crazy irrationality where, like, you can't even take a moment to contemplate whether the conduct being alleged rises to the level of all these extreme retaliatory actions being taken, where, when somebody gets expelled from Congress or even has to resign, as he's now done, under threats of expulsion, that creates a precedent for all of Congress.
Yeah, I mean, how long did it take for the Anthony Weiner thing to... it had to pause to not use a
that dragged on for
a sexually suggestive verb.
But that wasn't even about rape. That was just about him sending, photos of his underpants.
Right, but there's a similar allegation with Swalwell here, where one of the women said, "I was just one out of, I only had 1,000 followers. I never thought he'd respond." And yeah. But that whole Carlos Danger thing, it took a little while for Weiner to be vaporized, and the elements.
Remember when he had to apologize to Andrew Breitbart over it? Andrew Breitbart commandeered Anthony Weiner's press conference.
Oh, right. Yes. Right.
Because Breitbart was the one who broke that story initially, because he had this big, long-standing vendetta against Weiner. And so finally, Anthony Weiner fesses up and admits to it. And he just allows Andrew Breitbart to commandeer the press conference. And he's all like harried and he's like disheveled, which, I'm not going to begrudge. And eventually Anthony Weiner apologizes to Andrew Breitbart. It was amazing.
No, it's incredible. But
that took weeks.
Yeah, it took a while. And we'd have to go back and look to see the exact timeline. But the point here is that this all happened in a basically instantaneously. Like now in internet time, there is no longer any evaluation whatsoever of anything. There can't possibly have been. It's too fast for this to have been already dealt with. And Swalwell, in his resignation statement, sort of said, "Yeah, I object to this happening without any
due process,
but I'm gonna quit anyway because that's the kind of person I am."
Well, he's saying that it wouldn't be since he's going to be embroiled in this. It wouldn't be fair to his constituents for this to be occupying all his time, right?
Yeah.
Which I guess is true enough. Like, I mean, let's say he does sincerely contest the allegations, but it's still going to be something that now he's going to be saddled with for the foreseeable future. Yeah, that probably would distract from his ability to do congressional representation type stuff, right? But here's another problem. Even if you strongly dislike Eric Swalwell as I do, here's another argument for why you shouldn't just do this Schadenfreude thing and deactivate your critical faculties entirely. Okay, let's say he is a bit of a sleazeball. That's possible. And maybe he's even enough of a sleazeball that it would be a genuine...
Like a Brett Favre level thing.
Yeah, like a genuine liability for somebody who wants to be the governor of California, which is, one of the most high profile positions in the country or even the world. Like, and maybe so it's something that maybe should be probed in a primary if that could, be an issue. Okay, how come that can't be probed without all of a sudden having to maximally dramatize it and put it in the most histrionic terms possible? And now it's a rape scandal that requires instant expulsion. Like, there's no way to kind of rationally put it in proportion and maybe assess, okay, perhaps he is too reckless in his personal life to be elected to that kind of high profile position, and maybe it's
absolutely no,
but that's impossible to do because it has, in order to get it rocketing across the media at such warp speed as they successfully engineered, it has to be framed as the most dire possible allegation. It can't just be framed in a more rational way, like understanding like the complications of adult sexual interactions. No, that's not permissible anymore. It's either rape or it's something that I guess is like, doesn't come up at all, or can't be interrogated at all.
So when I saw the clip not that long ago, just before the show, the moment of that CNN interview where you could see when all the politicians probably bailed was when the interviewer asked, did he send suggested pictures to you? And she says, yes. That immediately puts in everybody's mind she's got pictures, right? And at that point, I'm sure every...
Well, no, because the Snapchat has disappearing images.
Oh, is that what they're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was clarified already. Like, she doesn't have them because they're using Snapchat, which has like as a sort of a feature of the app that they're disappearing messages, right?
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, then I can't explain. You're like, there's no way to possibly account for the velocity of this thing. Like, and it feels. It feels like this is a bad precedent to set, but
of course,
whatever.
When has that ever stopped anyone?
Yeah.
Look at this statement. This statement also just came out just before we started. So this is a statement from his now former campaign spokesperson. Did you see this?
Yeah, I saw that. Yep. Can you read it?
I released a statement on April 7th that defended my former employer amid rumors of misconduct. So that was sort of strange. They thought, like, I guess maybe like Melania, that they were preempting something by not even responding to any like official or discernible report of anything, but responding to social media rumors, and therefore, of course, bringing more attention to it and probably impelling the progenitors of the rumors to organize and actually get it transmitted through some reputable or seemingly reputable media outlet, right? So she says, this person says, thanks to the tremendous bravery of survivors. So now that these people are all survivors,
They're already survivors.
The date victim, the consensual date victims are now survivors. Thanks to the tremendous bravery of survivors, former colleagues, and others who have come forward since that time, we now know there is absolutely nothing to defend. I am deeply sorry if my words.
How do we know that already?
Yeah, how do we know that? I am deeply sorry if my words contributed to the already toxic discourse that protects those in power. I don't know. Was Eric Swalwell protected by any toxic discourse?
I don't know.
It seems like people couldn't wait to to shiv him at a moment's
Him and
notice.
like anybody else who's been connected to the Epstein thing or whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
and then this person, I guess this is a guy, so of course he has to be even more florid with the language. I offer my most fervent prayers of support to all survivors of sexual abuse.
yeah, the survivors term has become like a holy incantation. But you, again, just from a journalistic standpoint, the use of the word survivor before you've had a guilty verdict or something like that, especially when there's been a rape allegation, that's amazing for somebody who worked for Eric Swalwell to say, right?
Even if you want to argue that we shouldn't have to wait for a formal legal verdict to anoint somebody a survivor, which then puts them in this hollowed class of, people that were all supposed to be constantly holding up the voices of and structuring society in order to, ostentatiously support. And again, it's a creepy quirk of the new lexicon anyway, because it seems to me to invoke like Holocaust survivors or some sort of like historic atrocity that these people are now also victims of, that's like on the order of something like Holocaust survivor, right? But even if you want to say that, like we're not lawyers, we're not prosecutors, we don't have to wait for there to be a formal legal verdict before we can call somebody a survivor. Okay. So then maybe it should be a little bit contingent on the actual severity of the conduct that's being alleged, but it's not, because there's no way that any of what's even alleged could possibly rise to the level of survivorship. Like, let's say like there was an actual grievous allegation of just straightforward rape. Everybody who's reasonable would understand it to be rape. And let's say there's no guilty verdict. It won't be for another couple months, but like the evidence is overwhelming. Okay. I still might probably advise some caution, but if you want to call somebody a survivor in that circumstance, maybe more defensible. This stuff is basically a guy having flings with adult women who are enamored of him, it seems, but then, started to feel conflicted about it because he's married, who then all of a sudden, because they were hearing rumors on social media, according to one person, and never would have otherwise thought to even bring this up, much less frame it as something abusive. But they all get together, and now this stuff is supposed to be rape. Like that, you can't make a possible argument that this should warrant like automatic ascription of survivorship. It's absurd.
Yeah, I mean, what I would add to that is that
these are political operatives. That's another crazy thing. Again, the people organizing this, like there was one woman who actually was named, who just like had some flirtatious exchanges with them. Never, alleged anything physical. Ali Samarko, I think her name is. She's now married to one of these top Democratic influencers as well. Adam Poroshenko, like some Ukrainian guy, Poroshenko, or not Poroshenko, something like that.
Poroshenko.
I mean, her job is literally like she runs communications strategy,
right,
on social media for Democrats. And she's the one who apparently catalyzed this to a large extent, but like nobody could take 2 seconds to wonder if there may be any other factors here that we should be cognizant of before just declaring that this guy needs to have his campaign exploded, expunged. Oh, and by the way, did you see that the Manhattan District Attorney?
No, I didn't see this. What?
Alvin Bragg. Mm-hmm. They announced that they've opened a criminal investigation.
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Because one of that CNN woman's allegations supposedly took place in Manhattan. So, he's going to be, he's got to like face now criminal charges, expelled from Congress. We have to upend precedent in the House of Representatives to expel him overnight. Campaign imploded. renounced by everybody in the Democratic Party who, say what you will for the Democrats, but when they really want to take collective action, they can. And it usually tends to be around this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It's just crazy to me.
This is all in one day, folks. This story. And my angle on this, and this is the last thing I'll say, is in addition to all the things that you said, there's no possible way that for instance, his former campaign manager or campaign employee could possibly have evaluated all of the evidence, or even or digested the weight of Swalwell's denials. They may very well be bullshit, but there's no possible way to evaluate that in that space of time.
You know what that guy did evaluate? He evaluated his own career prospects
exactly
in the Democratic Party professional class,
right?
Where he can't have this hanging over his head, so he's got to take some,
nobody can have it hanging.
Corrective action, right?
And
it's like Ruben Gallego couldn't wait another minute to disavow,
right?
Because in the primary, in the presidential primaries, like in a year and a half or 2 years, somebody could say, Senator Gallego, how could you have possibly waited so long to renounce this abuse, this heinous abuser, and stand with the survivors? Meaning, like, the extra half hour that maybe he did wait, that's going to be now a huge political vulnerability for him.
Hold on a second. Somebody's actually asking, does Michael know that infidelity is actually illegal?
Oh, is it? Can you cite the criminal code? I mean, I do think there are some antiquated laws or on some states criminal codes that might like technically illegal, make it illegal.
Who the fuck knows? But come on.
Okay, so then lock up Donald Trump, lock up Gavin Newsom,
everybody,
lock up Bill Clinton, lock up this Tony Gonzalez guy, who's also now they're saying they might
every professional athlete in history.
Lock up Nancy Mace.
Did she have an affair?
Okay, I take that one back. There was some crazy turmoil having to do with a relationship that I think was supposed to involve some kind of
infidelity. Let's cut this short because I'm now.
If you're saying if this guy's point is that sexual misconduct can rightly encompass now just marital infidelity, then we've undergone like a semantic breakdown, because misconduct definitely connotes, right, something that's coercive or violative or abusive, right? That is, in this some kind of similar category to rape. It's not just you have a moral objection to infidelity.
Well, and look, this is the thing that Richard what is it, Hanania? Hanania wrote about the sort of rapid reconfiguring of relationship dynamics. There's all these stories about age gapped relationships. This is all in the Epstein era. We're hurtling back into the Victorian age, like at light speed. It's bizarre. And again, I say this as a person who cannot stand Eric Swalwell. I would, if anybody was going to be this kind of scumbag, I could believe it. But you need time to digest it, right. And they haven't taken it, and that is a very scary thing. Anyway, lots of,
and now the Democrat who might actually make it out of the jungle primary in California is Tom Steyer, who also ran in the 2020 Democratic primaries along with Swalwell,
right?
And his whole strategy is to just use his billions of dollars to be the only person who has the resources to run TV commercials on the airwaves across a state as big as California.
I love it. I mean, that would be. Well, look, there are so many ironies in all this shit. I mean, between Russiagate, now Russiagate's coming back as Israel's got blackmail material on Trump, but not. I mean, now we got the Anthony Weiner story repeating itself.
Melania could be a turncoat,
right? Yeah, who the fuck knows anymore? Maybe it's all true. I mean, I'm ready to just passively accept that all of this shit is real now at this point. I mean, it's just crazy. All right,
it just sounds like a surrender, like you can't take it anymore.
Yeah,
fine,
I mean,
fine,
okay,
it's all real.
Yes,
they did it. They killed JFK.
Right. I'm in. Yeah, they did it. What is it today? I'm in. I think that's my new theory about everything.
Here's my brain. I will remove it from my head and just hand it over to you, internet.
you can have it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go shoot some baskets.
Yeah. Exactly.
But all right. Well, Michael, good to see you. And thanks everybody for hanging out with us. And man, is the world going crazy fast. And we'll see you again later this week.
So long.